The silent watchers. The alarm pierced through the quiet hum of the HFY monitoring station like a blade through silk. Commander Zixtal's 4 eyes snapped open from his meditation pose, his blue-scaled skin rippling with tension. In his 3 centuries of service, the veteran Aquarian had never heard such an urgent tone from the station's ancient warning systems. The monitoring station hung in the void between star systems, a massive crystalline structure that had watched over this sector of space for over a millennium. Its purpose was simple: observe, record, and report any unusual activity in the outer rim territories. For the past 400 years, that job had been remarkably peaceful. Commander. The voice belonged to Tekra, his second-in-command, a young crystalline whose translucent body flickered with nervous energy. You need to see this immediately. Zixtal flowed across the command chamber, his liquid movements betraying none of the concern building in his mind. The main display showed readings that made no sense. Energy signatures were cascading across their sensors like a waterfall of impossible data. "What am I looking at, Tekra?" he asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen the rise and fall of 3 different galactic governments. "Unknown transmission source, sir. The signal originated from grid section 447 Alpha, the dead zone near the abandoned human colonies." Tekra's crystalline form pulsed with different colors as she worked frantically at her station. "But Commander, that's impossible. Nothing has transmitted from that region for 4 centuries. The dead zone. Every spacer in the galaxy knew about that cursed region of space. Once home to a thriving human civilization, it had gone completely silent during what historians called the Great Silence. Overnight, every human world, every human ship, every human signal had simply stopped. The galactic hegemony had sent investigation fleets, but they found only empty planets and abandoned cities. No signs of struggle, no evidence of destruction, just silence. "Display the transmission," Zixtal ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing waves of static that gradually resolved into a clear signal. The message was simple, broadcast in the old human standard language that the universal translators had no trouble converting. Emergency broadcast. This is automated beacon designation Prometheus 7. Human Deep Space Fleet vessel Prometheus, approaching galactic core region. Arrival imminent. Repeat, human vessel incoming. This is not a drill. The message repeated endlessly, each repetition accompanied by a timestamp that showed it had been broadcasting for exactly 72 hours. Zixtal felt ice water flow through his veins. Humans returning after 400 years of silence. It was impossible. The species had been declared extinct by the Hegemony Council decades ago. Yet here was proof that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humans had survived. "Sir," interrupted Veltar, the station's insectoid communications officer, his 6 arms working multiple control panels simultaneously. "I'm detecting similar broadcasts from 17 other monitoring stations across the outer rim, all reporting the same message, all from previously dead human territories." The implications hit Zixtal like a physical blow. This wasn't a single, automated beacon malfunctioning after centuries of silence. This was a coordinated effort, a systematic activation of human technology across multiple star systems. Someone, or something, was deliberately announcing the return of humanity. "Get me a priority channel to Hegemony Command," Zixtal ordered. "Maximum encryption. This information cannot reach civilian channels until we understand what we're dealing with." As Veltar worked to establish the connection, the station's long-range sensors began detecting something else. Deep space gravitational disturbances, the kind caused by massive objects moving through hyperspace. Whatever was coming, it was big enough to bend space around itself. The priority channel crackled to life, displaying the image of Grand Admiral Morden, the Hegemony's supreme military commander. The ancient ethereal being appeared as a swirling mass of energy contained within a humanoid shape, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "Commander Zixtal, I trust you have good reason for using emergency protocols?" "Admiral, we're receiving coordinated broadcasts from the human dead zones. They claim a human vessel called Prometheus is approaching the galactic core region. Zixtal transmitted all the data they had gathered. Sir, if this is real, then we face either the greatest deception in galactic history or the return of a species we believed extinct. The Admiral's energy form flickered with what might have been concern. Commander, I'm placing your station on highest alert. Continue monitoring and report any changes immediately. I'm convening an emergency session of the Hegemony Council. The connection ended, leaving Zixtal alone with his thoughts and fears. Around him, his diverse crew worked with quiet efficiency. Tekra monitored the energy readings that continued to flood their sensors. Veltar maintained communication links with other stations throughout the sector. Dr. Kixla, their resident scientist and the only gaseous being on the station, floated near the analysis terminals, her cloud-like form shifting colors as she processed the incoming data. Commander, Dr. Kixla's voice resonated from speakers throughout. Her containment field. I've been analyzing the transmission protocols. The technology is definitely human in origin, but it's been significantly advanced. These broadcasts are using quantum entanglement communication methods that we've only theoretical understanding of. The humans have made considerable technological progress during their absence. That revelation sent new chills through the command center. The humans who had vanished 400 years ago had possessed impressive technology, enough to establish colonies across dozens of star systems and maintain a civilization that rivaled any in the galaxy. But they had never demonstrated anything approaching quantum entanglement communication. If they had developed such capabilities during their mysterious absence, what else had they learned? Hours passed as reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The human broadcasts weren't limited to the outer rim territories. Automated beacons were activating throughout former human space, creating a communication network that spanned hundreds of light years. Each beacon transmitted the same message, but together they formed a pattern that suggested careful planning and coordination. Sir, Tekra announced, her crystalline form now pulsing with rapid nervous flickers. The gravitational disturbances are getting stronger. Whatever's approaching is massive, possibly larger than anything in our databases. And it's moving fast, much faster than conventional hyperspace travel should allow. Zixtal studied the readings on his personal display. The numbers were staggering. If the sensors were accurate, the approaching object was several kilometers long and possessed a mass equivalent to a small moon. Yet it moved through hyperspace, with the grace of a fighter craft, defying every known law of physics. The communication panel chimed with an incoming priority message from Hegemony Command. This time, instead of Admiral Morden, the transmission came directly from the council chamber itself. The screen showed the assembled representatives of 12 different species, all of whom looked deeply concerned. Attention, all monitoring stations. The voice belonged to Speaker Wythgol, an ancient tree being who served as the council's current leader. We are experiencing unprecedented activation of human technology throughout the galaxy. All military units are to maintain defensive positions but avoid hostile action unless directly threatened. We do not yet understand the nature of this situation. Zixtal acknowledged the transmission and returned to monitoring the approaching gravitational anomaly. The readings continued to intensify, suggesting that whatever was coming would arrive within the next few hours. Around him, his crew prepared for the unknown, checking systems and reviewing first contact protocols that hadn't been used in centuries. Dr. Kixla drifted closer to his command position, her gaseous form taking on a more solid appearance as she concentrated. Commander, I've been thinking about the timing of these activations. 400 years of silence, then suddenly coordinated broadcasts across the galaxy. This suggests either automated systems triggered by some external event or deliberate activation by surviving humans who have been watching and waiting. Watching for what? Zixtal asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Perhaps for the right moment to return, or perhaps... She paused, her form shifting to darker colors, perhaps for something else to arrive that required their intervention. Before Zixtal could respond, every alarm in the station began screaming simultaneously. The main display erupted with energy readings that exceeded their sensors' ability to measure. Space itself seemed to tear open like fabric, creating a wound. In reality, that pulsed with unimaginable power. "Commander!" Veltar's voice rose above the chaos. "Massive hyperspace emergence detected. The object is materializing at coordinates 334 Mark 7, approximately 1 astronomical unit from our position." Zixtal watched in amazement as something impossible took shape in the void before them. The human vessel, Prometheus, emerged from hyperspace like a mountain rising from the ocean depths. It was enormous, easily 5 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a patchwork of familiar and alien technologies welded together in ways that should have been impossible. But what struck Zixtal most was not the ship's size or its strange construction. It was the fact that it looked like it had been through hell and back. The hull showed signs of massive damage that had been expertly repaired. Weapon systems that belonged to a dozen different species were mounted along its length, and covering everything was a layer of scarring that spoke of battles fought against something terrible and unknown. The Prometheus hung in space like a wounded giant, its presence causing gravitational fluctuations that affected everything within, 100,000 kilometers. Then, for the first time in 400 years, a human voice spoke directly to the galaxy. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human Deep Space Fleet vessel Prometheus. We've come home." The Prometheus rises. The silence that followed Captain Chen's transmission lasted exactly 17 seconds. Then every communication system in the sector erupted into chaos as military commanders, government officials, and civilian broadcasters all tried to respond simultaneously. Commander Zixtal quickly switched his station to emergency frequencies, filtering out the noise to focus on official hegemony communications. "All units maintain position and observe," came Admiral Morden's steady voice across the command channel. "Do not approach the human vessel. Repeat, do not approach. We're deploying first contact protocols immediately." Zixtal watched through his station's long-range viewers as 3 hegemony diplomatic vessels approached the massive human ship. The vessels looked like toys compared to the Prometheus, their sleek designs contrasting sharply with the battle-scarred hull of the human dreadnought. The lead diplomatic ship, commanded by Ambassador Silthera of the Ethereal Delegation, transmitted the standard first contact greeting in multiple languages. The response came not from the Prometheus's bridge, but from an automated system that spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Diplomatic vessels, you are acknowledged. The Prometheus requests immediate docking clearance with the nearest hegemony, station capable of handling a vessel of our displacement. We carry urgent information regarding an imminent threat to all life in this galaxy." Commander Zixtal felt his blood freeze. Threat to all life? The humans hadn't spoken to anyone in 4 centuries, and their first message was a warning of galactic extinction. "Commander!" Dr. Kikla floated near his position, her gaseous form shifting to worried purple hues. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the Prometheus. Their power systems are generating readings that should be impossible. And there's something else, something that doesn't match any known technology in our databases." Before Zixtal could respond, the Prometheus began moving. Despite its enormous mass, the human vessel accelerated smoothly toward the HFY monitoring station, its approach vector perfectly calculated to match their orbital position. Whoever was piloting that ship possessed skills that bordered on supernatural. "Incoming transmission from the Prometheus," announced Veltar, his 6 arms dancing across control panels as he processed the signal. "They're requesting permission to dock with our station." Zixtal stared at the approaching dreadnought. His station was large by most standards, but the Prometheus was easily 10 times bigger. Allowing such a massive vessel to dock would put his entire crew at risk. Yet the urgency in Captain Chen's voice suggested they had little choice. "Granted," he said finally. "Dock at Port 7, the heavy cargo bay, but maintain full defensive protocols." As the Prometheus maneuvered into position, Zixtal got his first close look at the human vessel. What he saw defied explanation. The ship's hull incorporated technology from dozens of different species, but not in the crude makeshift way of pirates or scavengers. This was precision engineering, with human designs seamlessly integrated with alien systems to create something entirely new. Weapon systems that belonged to the warlike Kretak were mounted alongside peaceful Aquarian sensor arrays. Crystalline shield generators worked in harmony with gaseous energy cores. Even more disturbing were the technologies he didn't recognize at all, systems that looked utterly alien to anything in the galactic databases. The docking procedure took 3 hours, during which time reports continued flooding in from across the galaxy. Similar human vessels were arriving at major population centers throughout hegemony space. Not an invasion fleet, but rather a coordinated return of a species that had somehow survived 4 centuries in the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim. When the airlock finally opened, Zixtal was there to greet whatever emerged. He had no idea what to expect. The humans who had vanished 400 years ago had been reasonably similar to several other bipedal species in the galaxy. But 4 centuries of isolation could have changed them in unpredictable ways. What stepped through the airlock was still recognizably human, but enhanced in ways that were immediately apparent. Captain Sarah Chen appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent staring into the void. But she moved with perfect balance despite the station's artificial gravity, and her eyes held depths that seemed to reflect the darkness between stars. Behind her came a small delegation of humans, each wearing uniforms that combined familiar, human military styling with technological enhancements that pulsed with subtle energy. Most disturbing of all, each human carried weapons that looked nothing like the defensive systems the hegemony was familiar with. Commander Zixtal, Captain, Chen spoke with a voice that carried absolute authority. Thank you for allowing us to dock. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Captain Chen, Zixtal replied, trying to project calm despite his racing thoughts. Welcome back to civilized space. Your people have been gone for 400 years. You thought we were dead. Chen's expression softened slightly. In many ways, you were right. The humanity that left this galaxy no longer exists. We are what survived. She gestured toward a conference room near the docking bay. Commander, I need to speak with you and your senior staff immediately. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but the evidence is heading toward the galactic core at approximately 0.3 light speed. We have perhaps 6 months before it arrives. In the conference room, Captain Chen activated a portable holographic projector that cast images of star systems none of them recognized. The display showed massive structures that seemed to consume entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. 400 years ago, Chen began, our deep space exploration vessels encountered something beyond the galactic rim. We called them the Devourers, though their true name is unpronounceable in any language we know. They are not a species in any sense we understand. They are something far worse. The holographic display shifted to show creatures that defied description. Massive organic constructs that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space without ships, consuming matter and energy on a scale that boggled the mind. When our first contact teams encountered them, we realized immediately that negotiation was impossible. The Devourers don't communicate, don't reason, don't show mercy. They simply consume everything in their path and use the absorbed matter to create more of themselves. Dr. Kixla's gaseous form shifted to deep red, indicating extreme distress. Captain, are you saying that your entire species abandoned the galaxy to fight these creatures? Not abandoned, Chen corrected. Sacrificed. We couldn't defeat them through conventional warfare. They absorbed our weapons, learned from our tactics, grew stronger with each encounter. So we made a desperate choice. We evacuated our entire civilization beyond the galactic rim and began a 4-century holding action to buy time. Zixtal leaned forward, his 4 eyes focusing intently on the human captain. Buy time for what? To find a way to stop them, permanently. Chen touched a control on her projector, and the display changed to show technical specifications that made no sense to anyone present. We've spent 400 years studying the Devourers, learning their weaknesses, developing weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. Tekra's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy. Captain, the technologies we've observed on your ship, They're not human in origin. No, they're not. Chen's expression grew grim. We allied with species from beyond this galaxy, civilizations, that had also faced the Devourers and survived. Some of those alliances came at costs you wouldn't understand. We are no longer purely human, but we are still human enough to remember what we're fighting for. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. An entire species had exiled itself from the galaxy for 4 centuries, fighting an impossible war against entities that consumed reality itself. And now they were asking for help. "What do you need from us?" Zixtal asked finally. "Everything." Chen stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. "The Devourers are coming whether we're ready or not. Our holding action is failing. We've lost too many ships, too many people. But we've learned enough to give this galaxy a fighting chance, if all the species work together." She turned back to face them, and Zixtal saw something in her eyes that chilled him more than any threat of cosmic destruction. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope that had survived 4 centuries of war against impossible odds. "The Hegemony Council needs to understand what's coming," Chen continued. "Every species, every world, every military force in the galaxy will need to coordinate their efforts. The Devourers consume everything, but they have patterns, weaknesses, that can be exploited if we work together." Veltar looked up from his communication station. "Captain, I'm receiving reports that human vessels are making contact with governments throughout the galaxy. Are they all delivering the same message?" "They are. And they're also beginning the process of sharing our accumulated knowledge. Weapon designs, defensive technologies, tactical information that cost us millions of lives to acquire." Chen's voice carried the weight of unimaginable loss. "We're giving the galaxy everything we've learned, but success will depend on how quickly your people can adapt." The meeting continued for hours as Captain Chen shared intelligence that would have taken decades to verify through normal channels. The Devourers traveled in massive swarms, consuming everything in their path before moving on to the next target. They adapted quickly to new threats but showed predictable behavioral patterns that could be exploited by coordinated forces. Most importantly, they could be stopped, but only through weapons that required resources from multiple species and coordination on a scale never before achieved in galactic history. As the briefing concluded, Zixtal realized that everything had changed. The peaceful galaxy he had known was about to face a war that would determine the survival of all life itself. The humans had returned not as conquerors, but as desperate allies bearing both terrible warnings and the tools needed to fight back. "Captain Chen," he said as the meeting ended, "on behalf of the Hegemony, I want you to know that humanity will not stand alone in this fight." Chen smiled for the first time since boarding the station, and for a moment, Zixtal caught a glimpse of the species that had once filled the galaxy with wonder and hope. "Commander, after 400 years of fighting alone, those are the most beautiful words I've ever heard.